fall down on you. So. All right, well, thank you. We don't usually get this many people because nobody really cares. But since it was lox and bagels, lox and bagels, that'll bring out the crowd. I was born 90 years ago. And as one of my daughters said to me, I didn't think you'd live this long. I grew up in the 60s, the 40s, late 40s, 50s, survived the 60s, the smoke-filled era of the 70s, the cocaine era of the 80s, free love. Got pretty expensive though because I got remarried. But, I was born in 1935 in a candy store on Girard Avenue, 30th and Girard Avenue, known as Brewery Town. Great neighborhood. My mother lived at 2935 Girard and moved to 2947 Girard when my dad opened a candy store, a little variety store. They were going to try it for 1 year. 57 years later, they sold it. And but what a great life! I had comic books, milkshakes, tasty cakes, pretzel rods, you name it. And I think I had a milkshake every night of my life. No breast milk. Milkshakes. We had Breyer's ice cream, and
that's right.
I got old enough to work behind the counter. I dipped so much Breyer's ice cream that I had a Popeye right arm. My left arm was olive oil, not virgin either. So I was bar mitzvah at KI on Broad Street, Broad and Columbia, Connecticut Cicero. And when, with my first wife and 4 children, we moved to Upper Dublin, and this was our synagogue. And my son was bar mitzvah here, my daughters were confirmed here, and I atoned here. Had to do that every week. And then I moved into Center City, I remarried, and I was married 20 years the first time. 44 years the second time. I'm still with my second wife, and she says there's only one way I'm getting out of it, and that's feet first. In fact, we have a dog that's almost 15, and they're taking bets. Who's going to go first, me or the dog? I'm betting on the dog. So I lived in this candy store, and it was wonderful. Our door was open from 6:30 in the morning till 11:45. I don't know why they picked that, but 11:45 at night. And my mother wanted to be down there early in the morning to take care of the neighbors who were going to get on the 15 trolley car and go to work at Schmidt's or Bud's or some of the other places, Strawberry Clothes, you name it. She wanted. They stopped in for their cigarettes, cigars, feminine products, newspapers, last-minute aspirins, film, whatever it was. We were open 7 days a week, and it was wonderful because the door was open. We didn't have a car. We didn't have a phone. We had a pay phone in the back, but we never had a phone. Of course, there was no computers, TVs, or cell phones. But we had a little radio behind the counter, and I used to sit on a little stepladder about this high and listen to radio. Monday night was Jack Benny, Tuesday night was Red Skelton, Wednesday night was this. But one of the things my mother always listened to was Kate Smith. Kate Smith from New York. She was the biggest star in America at the time.
That's true.
And I wanted to be a reporter. And we had newspapers coming in starting at 6 in the morning through 6 at night. Different editions: Bulletin, Daily News, Star Ledger, Journal, the Record. And I used to pore over these newspapers. I admit it. My name is Lou. I'm a newspaper junkie. I have been known to go through trash cans at railroad stations and airports to find a Washington Post, a New York Journal, a Wall Street Journal. If it didn't look too dirty or somebody puked on it or anything, I'd pick it up. And I was like a junkie, and I'm reading the Washington Post. This is incredible. So I wanted to be a reporter, and I went to Temple. My first wife became pregnant, and I dropped out in my senior year, and wound up getting a job at the Trentonian in Trenton, New Jersey, writing obituaries. That's how I started out. That's how I'll finish up too, probably. And it was great. I love journalism. And I went from there to the Doylestown Intelligencer. And from the Doylestown Intelligencer, I went to the Courier Post in Camden. But my aim was to get to Philadelphia, to my beloved Daily News. Now, when I was 11 years old, in the summer, Max, the driver for the Daily News, would take me on his route, and I would jump out at each store, and he would tell me how many papers to get, run in, put them on the counter, take the old ones back, and yell, "Daily News!" Jump back in the truck, and by noon, he would drop me off back at my house. I got to see the whole neighborhood and everything. Now, you should have seen this. Seatbelts, there weren't even seats. I was sitting on a milk crate. There were no doors. It was summertime, and he gave me a quarter at the end of each day. So now my dream was to get to the Daily News, and I finally get a job at the Daily News. Never wrote sports. All was politics, City Hall, the government, courts, things like that. And covering sports, I got to meet a gentleman by the name of Jerry Wallman. Nice Jewish guy from Washington. When he came here, he bought the Eagles. He was 36 years old and was reputed to have $36 million as a developer. And he started out with nothing. He hitchhiked with his wife from Shenandoah to Washington, got a job in a paint store, wound up becoming a developer, and now he's building the biggest building in America, the Hancock Center in Chicago. And so I got to meet him through a situation where he was suing the mayor of Philadelphia. His name was Jim Tate. And Jerry Wallman owned the Eagles. He had a man working for him by the name of Ed Snyder. Now, Jerry was jovial, a practical joker, easygoing. Snyder was, where's the money? Snyder, who I loved, I worked with for 20 years, side by side, best friends for 50-some years until he passed away in 2016. And they were opposites. So I became friendly with Ed Snyder. And he and I would go out drinking and go to dinner. And he said to me, "We want to hire you. You want to work at the Eagles?" I said, "No." "Do you want to work at Yellow Cab, which we just bought?" I said, "No." "Do you want to do this? You want to do that?" I said, "No." I said, "I just want to be a reporter." He said, "Well, listen, we got something cooking." He said, "We're going to apply for a franchise in the National Hockey League. And if we get that, we're going to have to build an arena. Now, would you like to run something like that?" I said, "You get it, I'm in." 3 weeks later, he calls me, he says, "We got it, are you in?" I said, "I'm in." I went home and told my wife. She said, "Hockey team, arena, what are you, crazy?" We have 4 kids, you got a good job, you got benefits, and hockey, it's not going to go over. I said, "Well, that's what everybody says." I said, "But you know me, I like a challenge." So, we were supposed to come up with $2 million for the franchise fee. There were 6 new teams coming into the league. There were 6 old teams. They were going to add 6 new teams to expand it and get a TV contract in America. So we had to turn our $2 million in June of 1967 in Montreal. And Jerry Wallman went under in the meantime. And he couldn't come up with any more money. And he's running around the world trying to find money. And we had $1 million. And Ed Snyder said to me, "You go up to Montreal." He said, "I will work over the weekend and try to get that other $1 million." Now, word was out that we were in financial trouble, that we were going to blow the forfeit the franchise, and there would be no new arena. And Baltimore was the first runner-up to get the franchise at Philadelphia forfeited. And I went up to Montreal, and Ed Snyder called me from his office. I had to go to my room to answer. And he said, "I think we got the money." I said, "Okay, great." He said, "Go to the Royal Bank of Canada across the street from Queen Elizabeth Hotel where you are." He said, "And I will wire it." Well, there was a blackout on the East Coast. No electricity. He couldn't wire it. So one of our the bankers said there's a private wire in New York, Morgan Guarantee Bank, which was helping finance the big things, and we can send it through there. Ed says, go back to the bank, wait for it. So now we're supposed to turn the check in at 1 o'clock. And Baltimore's there with their check. And I go over to the Royal Bank, and I'm waiting, and the check comes in. And I said, oh my God, we got the check. And I'm with Bill Putnam, who was president of the team at the time. And we run across the street, and there's a big medieval barrier in the center. I call it medieval. And you had to climb over that run. It's a 95-degree day in June, and I'm in a three-piece suit, and I'm sweating, I'm nervous, and I'm about to run down the hall to the room where the check has to be turned over, and Bill looks at it and says, oh my God, it's made out to the National Hockey League. I said, so? He said, it's got to be made out to the New York Rangers, because each of the incoming teams were to take a $2 million check and hand it to one of the existing teams. Our recipient was supposed to be the Rangers. So he said, oh my God. So I run up to my room, call Ed Snyder. I tell him what's going on. He goes, I'm having a heart attack. I said, hey, what should I do? He says, go back to the bank. I'll see if we can get another thing. The blackout's still going on. So I run back. Check comes through, made out to the Rangers. $2 million guaranteed. It's a cashier's check. The money's in the bank. How Snyder did it, I don't know. He remortgaged his house. Well, I do know. He sold 5 years of our TV rights, the Flyers TV rights to Channel 48 for a fish cake. He got Bill Fishman off of his mower, lawnmower in Gladwin. He was the president of Aramark. He said, can you come up with $250,000? I'll do this, we'll do that. He got a couple other people. We got the $2 million. I got the check. Across the street, over the medieval barrier. Go back in time when you do that, you know. And up the steps, down the hall, and there's the Baltimore guys, cocky as hell. I walk past them, and I hear Clarence Campbell, the president of the National Hockey League, said, Philadelphia, you're up. I walk in, there's Clarence Campbell sitting there, and there's Bill Jennings, the owner of the Rangers, and they're both staring at me, you know, like I got smallpox or something. And Clarence Campbell did not like Jews. He did not like Ed Snyder. He did not like Jerry Wallman. He didn't like Philadelphia. He felt that he did not want the league to expand because he wanted it to be Montreal-based. But in order to get a big national contract, TV contract, they had to have St. Louis and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Minnesota. So I said, he said, do you have the check? I said, yes, sir. Hand it to him, and he looks at it, hands it to Bill Jennings. He looks at it, hands back, and said, that'll be all. So I turned it to Jerry Lewis, and I said, well, did we get the franchise, Mr. Lady? I said, Mr. Snyder would like maybe a piece of paper for $2 million? I can't go back and tell him I don't know what happened. He says, yes, you have the franchise if your check clears, which I doubt. Well, it was a cashier's check, I know. I walk out there, the Baltimore guys standing there all smirking. I said, boys, I think you're fucked. Well, I run up to my room, get on the phone, and I call Ed Snyder. I said, Ed, he said, did we get the franchise? I said, well, yeah, I think. He said, what do you mean you think? He says, I knew I shouldn't have sent you up there. Well, the reporters are knocking on my door. They want to come in, they want to interview, want to know all about Philadelphia and what are the plans and everything. So we opened, we ran out of money. We had to, we didn't quite finish the scoreboard. Our dasher boards were 90% completed up in a wood shop in Brooklyn, but they were on strike, and we couldn't get them, and we had exhibition games scheduled. So we had to cancel the first two exhibition games, and somehow we sent a truck up to New York at midnight, to Brooklyn. And the union somehow took a break. I don't know how that happened. I guess they were just nice guys. And they even helped us load the unfinished dash reports into the trailers and brought it back to Philly, took it to a South Philly shop, and had them installed at the Spectrum. So these are some of the things that people don't realize, don't know. The Flyers they're back now. They're on the way back. They've had some very lean years. Problem was, when I left, I took the playbook. So, so I have 2 Stanley Cup rings. I brought one. Whoops! I don't trust this crowd with 2 of them. This is 1975. I'll be happy to take pictures with it, but you'll have to let me hold your wallet or your bag or something. And I wrote a book about all this, and they're for sale for $20. Cash or whatever, crypto, whatever that stuff is. Did I do something?
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just got told. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it was very interesting running the Spectrum. We just didn't have hockey. We had concerts, and we had basketball, boxing, wrestling, roller derby, horse things, whatever you call them, tennis, you name it. One of the things we had was concerts. And we didn't know, because no one had ever had a rock concert in an arena yet. And Electric Factory in Philadelphia, Larry Maggot and the Spivak brothers came up with the idea, we want to put concerts in the Spectrum. You're going to fill it up. I mean, we got 20,000 seats here. Don't worry, we'll fill it up. Well, it turned out that concerts were as important to the success of that arena as hockey and basketball. And we had middle of the road acts too. We had, I always forget his name. I'll think of it in a few minutes. Anyway, shoot, what's the heck is his name? Neil Diamond. So Neil Diamond was going to perform on a Monday night. He comes in on Sunday, wants to come to the Flyers game. We seat him in our box with Ed Snyder and our wives. And halfway through the game, he says, "Listen, I'm hungry. Can I get a hamburger or a hot dog or something?" Ed Snyder said, "No, we'll have a steak made in the restaurant downstairs." No, I just want a hot dog. He said, "Could I go out and walk around?" He said that between periods, while the game's on, so it's not crowded out there. He said, "Yeah, sure, we'll get a guard." And I said, "No, I'll take him out." So I take Neil Diamond, who's a really nice guy, by the way. I take him and we're walking around, and he walks over to a concession stand, and standing behind the counter is a South Philly Annie. She must have been 75 years old at that time, the hair up and this and that. Toothpick in her mouth, and she said, "What can I get you?" And Neil says, "I'd like to get a hot dog and a Coke." She goes, "Pepsi. We only have Pepsi." Okay, I'll take Pepsi, whatever you got. So while she's dishing it out, he says to her, "By the way, there's hockey tonight, and do you ever have concerts here?" And she says, "Oh yeah, we got a lot of concerts." She says, "Tomorrow night we got that Neil Diamond. I can't stand him." He laughs, we laugh. We go back, we tell Ed Snyder. He says, "I want her fired." Neil Diamond says, No, I thought that was really funny. So I'm going to flash ahead. I start writing this book 30 years later. And I said, did I make that up? Was I stoned? Did I dream that? Am I exaggerating? Well, lo and behold, there's an article in the Enquirer that same week. It's her son talking about her after she passed away, prior to her, in her obituary, saying she told Neil Diamond she couldn't stand him. God damn it! All right, I still got it. So another night, I walk into the super box, and there were 60 seats. We had 10 seats at the end. And Ed Snyder's there, his wife's there, my wife's there. And sitting towards the middle is Colonel Sanders. Harlan is his name. Harlan Sanders, the real guy, with the whole regalia, with the white this and that. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe he's here. Well, we were going to start selling Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he was here for a promo. So I noticed during the game, this guy is cursing like crazy. MF this and goddamn that, GDXYZ, at the game. You know, they can't hear him. He just up to go. Oh my God, I've never heard a man, woman, sailor curse like that in my life. So now again, 30 years later, I'm writing the book. Did I make that up? Did that really happen? So I look him up on Google. Thank God for Google. I look him up on Google, and he said that he wanted to become a deacon, but he had Tourette's syndrome where he couldn't stop cursing. I said, son of a bitch. I'm right again. So I wrote that. So now the Rolling Stones are coming in. And it's 1972, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Every place the Rolling Stones went, there was riots because people were printing thousands of counterfeit tickets. And we were afraid there was going to be damage to the building. And so we took everything out of the parking lot, from our garden in front, anything that could be thrown at windows and stuff like that. And Ed Snyder says, I don't think that's enough protection. Because they were going to be there for 2 days, an afternoon show and then a night show. Pardon me. So I said, well, let me call the captain of the police district in South Philadelphia. I know him well. Well, I asked him if he could send some cops down. So he said, absolutely, you want a busload? I said, yeah, I'll take a busload. So he sends a busload of cops down. We don't have any problems. The afternoon show, the next day, the night show, no problems. Just the usual overdoses, a couple of fights here and there. And everything goes well. We made a lot of money. And in those days, we needed it because we had to pay off this mortgage because we had taken the Spectrum out of bankruptcy. And we're running the Flyers, too. So everything's wonderful, we're celebrating. We even went downstairs and opened the locker and took out a lot of the confiscated wine that we take from kids when they come to concerts. And we had a bleeping party. It didn't cost us a dime. The bongs we didn't touch. So, hey, this is show business, you know what I mean? So, a week later, I get an invoice in the mail from the city treasury department, $63,000 for police support. Well, we made $50,000 in the 2 shows, 25 each night. We're going to lose $13,000 on this. Snyder's going to kill me after he fires me. So it says again, he's having a heart attack, and I said, well, let me call my friend Frank Rizzo. Now, I met Frank Rizzo by happenstance. I was walking down Broad Street around dinner time, and Hubert Humphrey, Vice President of the United States, was speaking at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel. And all these hippies are outside, and anti-Vietnam protesters, and Rizzo has all these cops lined up, and they're keeping peace. And a detective says something to Rizzo, and he comes over to me and he says, "Are you Scheinfeld?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Let me shake your hand." Well, my hand disappeared into this 25-pound ham. I mean, this guy was big. He was big, starch white shirt. Well, at that time, he wasn't mayor. He was captain of the Center City Police District. And he says, "I want to thank you. You did me a big favor." What the hell? I never wrote anything about him, never met him. I said, yeah, sure. He says, "You called me the Cisco Kid." And I love that. Now, he had 2 pearl-handled revolvers that he wore as captain of the district. He would march around South Philly and Center City. Well, another reporter who covers the police, I covered City Hall, not the police, he named him. But who am I to correct Frank Rizzo? I said, "Oh yeah, right, anytime." He says, "Let me tell you something, kid." He says, "Anything you need, you call me." And he takes out a business card and it doesn't have anything on it but a private phone number. P05, whatever it might have been at that time. I put it then, I'll never call him, he scares me to death, you know. So now I said to Snyder, "I'll call my friend Frank Rizzo." So I find the card in my desk and I call, and his secretary answers. and I told her we'd like to come in, Ed Snyder and I would like to come in and talk to Mr. Rizzo. He was mayor now, Mayor Rizzo. And she said, let me check. Gets back on the phone. She says, can you be here at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow? I forgot. I'm just getting home by that time after a concert or a hockey game. And I said, sure. So we're there, right on the dot. He's already in his office, behind his desk. Now, his desk is this high, and he must have had a platform behind it, because he sat up like here. We were 6 feet away, 2 chairs, big chairs, and we're sitting there. It's like, it's a Nuremberg jury set up. And so what brings you gentlemen in today? And I said, I didn't pull the Jerry Lewis one. I said, well, Mayor, I said, he goes, Frank. I said, yeah, Mayor. He goes, no, Frank, call me Frank. I said, oh, okay. Frank, okay, Frank. I said, we have received an invoice from City Hall for $63,000 for police protection, which, wipes us out. It turns out to be a loss. And he says, well, didn't you expect to pay? I said, no, nobody told me. He says, well, you're a veteran reporter, promoter. He says, you don't get things for free. Nothing's free in Philadelphia. So I said, well, yeah. He said, you should have asked the captain, is there a charge? Now, it's his fault. He said, let me see the paper. He says, it's his fault. He didn't tell you. There's a half. He says, it's your fault. You didn't ask. Tears it again. Winds up in like 8 tears. He drops it in the trash can. I said, so that's it? We don't have to pay it? He said, no, I just wanted to see Ed Snyder's ass in my office. He says, you're a carpetbagger from Washington. You don't do anything for the city. He said, I think you should get involved with the Police Athletic League and some other things. And I said, oh yeah, you name it, we got to leave, and he said, wait a minute, I want to show you something. He had a telephone on his desk the size of this thing, with 1,000,000 buttons, and some are lit up, others are not. He hits this one button, picks it up, and he said, see, we just installed this thing called 411. He said, you call it, they answer immediately, they send a red car. He says, watch. And he hits the button, and the world's bigger now, and here we hear ring, 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 ring. And with each ring, his face is getting redder and redder and redder, and he's got a very, very big face. And he hangs up, and he hits it again, same thing. Then he calls a special number, and he says, who is this? And it goes, Sergeant such and such. Where's your captain? I want to talk to your captain. Well, what, sir, who's this? He said, it's Frank Rizzo. He says, I guess here I'm trying to show them something. It's not even goddamn things weren't working. So, fine, the guy apologizes. Rizzo apologizes. I said to Ed, you should get out of here. So we got up, we got out. And we get outside, and Ed Snyder's lit on a cigarette. He was a 4-pack a day lucky strike smoker without filters. And he says, I'll fight anybody, but that guy scares the shit out of me. So that was that story. The South Philly mob, when we were building the Spectrum and opening it, wanted to be involved. And a guy by the name of Vinny something or other calls and asked me to come over for espresso at their Italian-American social club on Passion Avenue. And could I be there at noon that day? It's 9 in the morning. I call Snyder. He says, I don't want to know anything about it. You told me, if you tell anybody I knew, I'll call you a liar. Well, thanks for the backup, Ed. Okay. Your building, your team. Okay, yeah, my wife. So I go over there, and it's this little storefront. The windows are kind of blacked out with a curtain, and a guy opens the door, and he goes, Lou the Jew. Lou the Jew. Good to see you, Lou the Jew. Well, we're off to a good start. He says, Vinny or Vincenzo, whatever his name was, Dominic, I don't know. He's in the back. Got espresso, and we got that good cheesecake from a Jew bakery in Brooklyn. It's brought in every day, the best cheesecake you'll ever have. Give Lou the Jew a piece of cheesecake. So I sit down and they say, listen, we've got some nice South Philly boys who would love to work at the Spectrum, but they don't want to have to come in every day. You know what I mean? So, they would like to get a check. It's called, I know it's called ghost payroll, where they get a check, they just never come to work. They get paid not to come to work. So I said, I played dumb. I said, look, we have an overnight crew that changes from basketball to hockey, from tennis to concert. It's all night, and it pays $2.50 an hour. I said, and it's run by the Navy Yard, by a captain who's stationed at the Navy Yard, and he brings all these sailors in at night to change the thing. And I could get you on that. He goes, no, we want something more like in the executive section. I said, well, let me see what I can do. Then he says, oh, by the way, he says, the circus is coming in. He says, I'd like to get my grandkids on the front row. Can you introduce them to some clowns? Can they see the animals? I said, sure. He says, so his assistant, give him 10 ones. 10 $100 bills, $1,000. So I put it down on the desk. I said, we take credit cards. I don't take cash. He said, no, put that a little something for yourself. I said, no, I don't. So I'll set you up with an account. He says, so look, who can I call? I don't want to bother you. Who can I call if I want to get tickets to different events? He says, like if Frank comes in or Barbara. He says, to people like that. He says, I don't want none of that jigaboo stuff. Oh, shit. I said, what? He said, only white stuff. I said, yeah, sure, whatever you want. Well, I get out of there, I go back and I tell Ed, I said, you want to know what happened? He said, no. I said, well, I didn't give him anything, I didn't promise him anything, but we're going to sell him some tickets. And that was about it. So now the Flyers are off to a start, and we're one of 6 new teams, and we're only drawing half a house. Opening night, we thought we'd get 10,000. We had 7,200, and half of those were complimentary tickets that we gave out. But as things started to get a little better, the crowds picked up. The papers, which at first weren't covering us, now started to cover us. And I came up with the idea of playing Kate Smith, God Bless America, instead of the national anthem, because at that time, during the Vietnam War, and during the racial problems in Philadelphia, people were disrespecting the national anthem, and that bothered me. And I said to Ed Snyder, what do you think they would do if we took the national anthem away from them? He says, what, are you crazy? He says, don't even think of it. I said, okay, well, I'm thinking of it. So now I'm down on South Street one day, and I go into this used record store, and I'm thumbing through, and I see Kate Smith, the big LP, at Carnegie Hall singing God Bless America. Well, it turned out that she was a tremendous patriot. She raised over $500 million during World War II for the war effort. And she sang for the boys at camps all over the world. And she was one of the biggest stars at that time. And so she went to Irving Berlin, her friend, and she said, do you have a patriotic song that I can sing? And he said, I do. He says, I wrote something in 1929, I think it was, when I was in the Army. He said, but I never did anything with it. Let me find it. He pulls it out. God Bless America. He gives it to her. He says, it's yours. He says, with one proviso. Any monies you earn with it, or this song earns, will go to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America. And that's still the case today. So she takes it to her orchestra at CBS Studios in New York. And they turned it into a beautiful rendition. She sings it that night, and it's a huge hit, and she sings it again at Carnegie Hall, and that's the record I got. So I take the record back to the Spectrum, and I take it to our electrician who operated the sound booth. And I said, listen, there's no event in the building tonight. Do me a favor. After 5 o'clock, I'll come up, play this over the big system in the whole building. He said, sure, okay. So I listened to it, and my God, I had never heard this song before. And when she hits those last notes, you get chills. I mean, it's like, and the building is reverberating. So I sat in the front row. I sat in the last row. I sat all the way up in the third deck in the corner. and everywhere I could to see how the sound was, and it was fantastic. So I decided I'm going to play it one night. So about 3 weeks later, Toronto Maple Leafs are in Philadelphia. They're a big, powerful team compared to our little Flyers. And so this is 1969, and this is what we call a money game, meaning a lot of people come to the game dressed up. The people, they don't get their tickets, so they help. And it's going to be on national television all through Canada and regionally in America. And I thought, what a chance to play in front of a crowd like that. So I tell the sound guy that morning, that we're going to play this tonight. He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Instead of the national anthem?" I said, "Yep." I tell the public address announcer. Now this was a year before Lou Nolan started. It was Kevin Johnson, I think his guy's name was. And he said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Well, I wasn't so sure. I'm getting nervous now. So now it's 7 o'clock, and Kevin Johnson says, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand and join in singing as Kate Smith," and the crowd goes, Sting's "God Bless America." Well, the hum turned into a roar, like, what's going on here? You know, people are yelling and cursing. Snyder, I'm over here. Snyder's over there. And he gets up, and he's fuming, and he comes over, now the song's playing, and he gets in my face, and he's cursing me out. "You son of a bitch. Why would you do something like this? You're going to get me killed. This is terrible. This is terrible." I said, "I told you I was going to do it." He said, "But I didn't think you were nuts enough to actually do it." But by the end of the first period, we're skating, we're hustling, we're hitting, we're scoring, we're leading. People are coming up the aisle. He's right on the aisle with his elbow on the edge. And they're, "Mr. Snyder, what a great idea. Oh, what a great song." Now we win the game, and it's one of the few times we ever beat, in those days, one of the existing teams, especially Toronto or Montreal. And now they're congratulating him. "What a great idea, Mr. Snyder. This should be our national anthem. This should be a..." He looks over at me. And he comes over, he goes, "I don't know how you did it, but keep it up." I said, "Okay." So that's the kind of relationship I had with Snyder. I was crazy, he was conservative. We made a beautiful couple. And I did a lot of things that were unorthodox. The National League had all their rules, and they didn't announce shots on goal to the end of the period. Like a boxing event doesn't announce who's the winner in a decision until it's all over. I said, "Why don't we just put it on the scoreboard every period, the end of every period, or just, we're running." Never been done before. I said, "Well, let's do it." Well, the league protested. We did it. I wound up selling the rights to that to Tasty Cake for $50,000. 2 signs that kept the running total of shots on goal, which may not mean a lot to people who don't know hockey, but if a hockey fan, we used to announce, wait till the end of the period and announce shots on goal, Flyers, Chicago 9, Flyers 21. Oh, the crowd would go crazy. So now we had a running total. My job was to bring in money. My job was to put asses in seats. So now the Kate Smith thing took off. The first 3 seasons we played it, 19 wins, 1 loss, 1 tie. And that was when we would win maybe 20-some games a season, 30 games a season. We only played it when we needed it. We only played it when we had to break a losing streak, or when a team like Toronto, Montreal, Rangers, Detroit came in. And by the time they retired 8 years later, it was something like 100 to 30. 100 wins, 30 losses. Tremendous percentage of winning. So at one point I went to Ed Snyder and I said, well, we were trying to get Kate Smith live. Now, her fame had practically disappeared. A lot of people thought she had passed away, she retired, and we reached out to her manager in New York to try to get her to come in and sing live, because it was all from that record. Well, her manager was a very snooty guy. He said, "Miss Smith doesn't sing at hockey games. Miss Smith sings for kings, queens, the Pope, the World Series, but not at a hockey game." I said, okay. So he put us off, and we're still winning, we're still doing it. Turned out she had an elderly uncle living in West Philly, believe it or not. Can you believe this? And he was sending her clippings of what a good luck charm she is. So I took, I'm sorry, so now she's seeing these clippings, and lost my train of thought there. She goes to this guy, her manager, and she says, do you think they would ever let me come down and sing? And he says, well, they've asked a few times. She says, oh, I would love to do that. So he calls us up. He says, Miss Smith has deigned to sing at one of your hockey games, against my better judgment. He says, now, Mrs. Smith is an international star. I'm sure you can't afford her, but make me an offer. But don't insult me. So my cousin Jay Simon was the promotion director at the Flyers at the time. He was going, I'm here, he's on the phone with this guy, we're going back and forth. I said, tell him $5,000, which to us was a lot of money back then. And he says, that's an insult. I said, okay, well, $4,000. He said, well, let me take it to Miss Smith. She normally gets $25,000. Well, she hadn't been making many appearances at this time in her career. She immediately accepted it. She comes down on the train. We picked the game. She would be live. We didn't tell anybody. I told Ed Snyder. He says, if it goes wrong, I don't want to know anything about it. I said, okay, yeah, thanks a lot. So she comes down on the train with her accompanist and a little suitcase. And she comes into my office. We sent a limo for her. Comes into my office, and we're talking, and Gene Hart's mother heard that she was going to be singing that night. I don't know how word got out. Gene Hart's mother happened to be on What's My Line, the CBS show. She was on the flying horse at Steel Pier that jumped into the Atlantic. Gene Hart's mother, go figure. So she says, oh, Miss Smith, I've followed you since I was a baby. And Kate Smith says, are you kidding? You're older than me. So she goes into the green room, an empty locker room, smelly locker room, to change. And meanwhile, everybody is no to anybody. And she comes back into my office and she says, I can't go on. I said, what do you mean you can't go on? She says, my dress is ruined. It got so creased in the I just can't wear it. I said, oh my God. I said, well, look, we're an arena. We get an iron. We have everything, right? We'll get an iron. No iron in the entire building. Well, it turned out my secretary, Maria Italiano, Malatono, I forget what her name was. Maria, her aunt lived 6 blocks from the spectrum, and she was a seamstress. So she'd surely have an iron. Well, she calls her aunt. We send her, we get our driver with the limo. Take this over, but don't tell anybody, keep it quiet, and knock on this door, and they'll take the dress and they'll give it back to you on a hanger, like a drug deal. So by the time he comes out, there's 300 people in this little tiny street wanting to see Kate Smith's dress. Word had spread. So he gets the dress, he zooms back, he gives it to her, she comes on, and we roll out this red carpet, which we'd never done before. And then an organ comes out, and the spotlights are on. And the crowd's like, oh, I think this might be her. And all of a sudden, and then Lou Nolan at this point said, ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join in as Kate Smith live from the Spectrum sings God. Well, the crescendo almost took the roof off, which did come off later on. That's another story. Well, Kate Smith comes out and she's bathed in the spotlights, and the accolades is just staggering. It was very emotional. I was nervous as hell how this would come off. And she sings this song, and when she hits those final notes, the crowd erupted in a cheer I've never heard that loud in my life, except when my wife is pissed at me, and my daughter's later. And thunderous, and she's throwing kisses, and the flash bulbs are going off. Now there's no, what do you call them? little cameras. They got the Kodak flashies going on all over the place. And 2 guards bring her up to the superbox where Ed Snyder and I and our wives are sitting. And she said, I can't catch my breath. She said, I've been all over the world. I've never had an experience like this in my life. This is incredible. I said, well, Miss Smith, thank you. We're just so proud to have you here. And I sit her next to my mother. I always get a clump when I tell this, because here was my mother and father from a little candy store on Girard Avenue, worshiping Kate Smith. And there she is sitting next to my mother. And that was one of the hallmarks of my career in terms of learning to share, that if you have it, you should share it. What is the good of having tickets and parking and access to backstage and t-shirts and autographs and players if you can't share it? And nothing made me feel better than having an old friend or get a letter from someone whose son has an illness. Could we do such and such? I said, and I would always say, tell them we're going to take them into the locker room. Tell them we're going to put them in a suite. Tell them we're going to take their whole Boy Scout, Cub Scout group and put them in a suite. We're going to meet this and that. And it was so good to see what little kindness you could use to make somebody's life something they would never forget. And I really enjoyed doing that. Now, I know some of you have to be in bed. I have a couple of other interesting events that took place. I was leaving for a vacation. I'm president of the Spectrum, vice president of Flyers right now, and I'm leaving for a vacation in Acapulco the next day with I'm between marriages. Caroline, Alex. And I've been wooing this young lady, and I wanted to really impress her, and I asked her if she'd like to go to Acapulco with me for a week. She said, oh, absolutely. So I thought, great. So I was supposed to leave at 6 o'clock the next morning. I get a call that afternoon from Mickey Rudin from California. He is Frank Sinatra's manager and lawyer, who I have dealt with in the past. And he says, Lou, I want you to do me a favor. He said, and now Sinatra's coming in for 2 sold-out shows. And Sinatra in South Philly is God. I mean, he's the Pope, he's everything, you know. So these are highly anticipated shows. $15 was the top price on the tickets. So Mickey says, a young man's going to come in tomorrow to see you with a check for $15,000 for 1,000 tickets. I said, well, okay. He says, he's with the Teamsters. I said, oh, okay. If it ain't the mob, it's the Teamsters. He says, they're going to buy 1,000 tickets at $15, your top price. You don't have to give them ringside or stage side. Give them, because Frank played in the round. He said, give them a little bit further back, but nothing, you know, in the nosebleed section. I said, oh, of course. So I call in Alan Flexer. Oh, anyway, he says, we're going to. The Teamsters are going to resell them for $30 a piece. They're going to make $15,000 for the Widows Fund. Okay, the old Widows Fund, of course. He said, it's all legit. He said, Frank wants it. He owes them a favor. I said, no problem. So I leave the next morning with this young lady for Acapulco. And we land in Dallas, and we change planes, and we go to Acapulco. And I'm in my Jansen bathing suit at the pool, sitting on a stool at a bar in the middle of the pool, with her sitting next to me in a little bikini. And the phone rings at the bar, and the bartender says, "Are you Scheinfeld?" I said, "Yeah, Rizzo." I said, "Yeah, I'm getting a call in Acapulco." It wasn't easy in the 70s to make a call to Mexico. You had a call, they had to call back when the operator got you. I get on. It's my secretary, Linda, and she's crying. I said, "Linda, what's the matter?" She said, "There's a man here in your office sitting at your desk with a gun. Well, doesn't sound too unusual to me. I said, what's his name? She said, Frankie Flowers. Oh, Frankie Flowers, yeah, okay. I said, well, put Mr. Flowers on the phone. So he gets in, he says, hey, I said, I hear you got a problem. No, you's got the problem. He says, these seats are shit. He says, they're upstairs in the last rows. I was supposed to get downstairs. He says, I want the good tickets. I said, well, okay, Mr. Flowers. Frankie Flowers Delfonso, a member of the mob. He had a flower shop in South Philadelphia. He was assassinated a few years later. I said, please come back tomorrow. No. He says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm sitting in your office until I get those effing tickets. Wow. I said, okay. So I said, well, put Alan, my assistant, on. I said, Alan, what the fuck happened? What's up, crazy? He says, I didn't think they needed such good seats. I said, Alan, where were you raised? Bryn Mawr? What are you, a suburban a-hole? I said, these guys are killers. I said, get in the box office right now and get 1,000 tickets together. They don't have the big front row, but start with the second row to the 10th row and get it done. And I hang up. And then I figure, I better call Mickey Rood, make sure everybody's happy. So we put through a call from the bartender to the desk, to the operator, to them. Half an hour later, Mr. Rood's on the phone. I said, Mickey, I said, everything's good. He says, no, everything's effed up. I said, what do you mean? He says, Frank is pissed. He's not playing your building. He's going to Atlantic City. He's going to play in Convention Hall, 30,000 people in one night instead of 2 times 15 in your building. I said, Mickey, I said, please, you know, I didn't say this to him, but this could be my job. You know, canceling 2 shows, Snyder's going to kill me. South Philly people are going to kill me. The mob's going to kill me. So I said, look, I'll give you a piece of the parking, which we don't normally do with concerts. I'll give you some of the concessions. I'll cut the rent a little bit. He says, I said, tell Mr. Sinatra. He says, tell him yourself. He's sitting right here. I go, oh, yeah, kid. I said, oh, Mr. Sinatra, I just want to say we're so. He says, we're just fucking with you. He says, find me some Jack when I'm in Philly. Well, that was his drink. He got Jack Daniels. And I'm still blubbering into the phone, mea culpas, and he was already hung up. So, and then I remember there's this girl next to me. And I hear her say, Louie, what's happening? And I look at her with my best Humphrey Bogart. I said, you don't want to know, doll. I said, we got to get back to Philly right now. Let's go to the room and relax for a couple minutes. And I said to the bartender, give me 2 double, whatever they were pouring that day, Mai Tais or whatever. Took them back to the room. Went back to Philly to make sure everything was all right. And Sinatra came in. The 2 shows, of course, sold out. It was wonderful. These are some of the things that happened with Sinatra, Rizzo, Neil Diamond. Elvis came in. He played the Spectrum, I think, 4 times. I saw him all 4 times. The last time he came in, he looked terrible. Terrible. He was bloated. He had unbuttoned his jumpsuit with a big medallion on it, and his chest was soaked with sweat. He had backup singers here, he had a band there, he had another band there, and he had other singers here, masking his voice. And by the time he finished, he looked like he was going to pass out. And he said to the crowd, folks, don't believe what you read in the papers. I'm in good shape. I'm going to be here next year. I'm going to come here every year for the next 20 years. Everybody stood and applauded. He died 4 months later. And that was one of the last times he performed. Not the last, one of the last times. Now, his manager, Colonel Parker, was a character with the cowboy bolo tie and the cowboy hat and boots, and he was his Svengali. He would come in 3 weeks before Elvis was to appear, and with his crew, they would go through the arena and count every seat in the building and mark it down on a manifest. Then they came back the day of the event, and made sure no extra seats were slipped in, which is something we would never do, of course. And he said to me, listen, after the concert, we're flying directly back to Vegas on our plane. He said, do you want to come on the plane? I thought, oh my God, come on a plane with he says, yeah. He says, I mentioned it to Elvis, and he thinks you're cool. I said, Elvis Presley thinks I'm cool? I'm sitting here in a three-piece suit and a tie, like Joe Jerkoff. and Elvis thinks I'm cool. So I said, you know what, I would love to, but I have a meeting tomorrow, a really important meeting with Ed Snyder and some bankers, so I can't go. To this day, I regret that. But he did say that Elvis takes a pill as soon as he gets on. Normally doesn't wake up till he gets there, but it would have been fun to do that. Now we started Prism because the flyers were so popular that we couldn't sell enough tickets. Home, away, sell out. The Broad Street Boys were incredible. So a gentleman came to us with an idea. He wanted to start a cable company in Philadelphia. And he said, I want to start with the flyers. He said, you guys are sold out. The Broad Street Boys are the biggest thing around. He said, we're going to take Bell telephone lines and connect them to bars in South Philadelphia on the west side of Broad Street. He says, and it became so popular, we did it became so popular that the owners of bars were selling season tickets based on how many stools they had at the bar. And Jim Kennedy, the former mayor of Philadelphia, a huge Flyers fan, he lived on 2nd Street. Well, they didn't get it down there. We were just doing west of Broad. He said he and his friends, even when he was 17, would sneak into bars west of Broad to watch the Flyers. It was just a tremendous attraction. Now, there was no such thing as big cable then. It hadn't started. Cable started in Allentown, PA. A man by the name of John Walsonovich, shortened it to Johnny Walson, had a store where he sold radios. When TV came out, he started selling TVs. But because of the mountains, the signals coming from Philadelphia turned out to be fuzz. So he decided to put an aerial on the mountain, an antenna. And then he ran wires from there, Warsaw Cross wires, down to his store. Picture was gorgeous. And he explained to each person who bought a TV, this is what you'll get at home if you hook up to one of my wires. So he started cable. That's how cable started in America. And of course, you know, we can't live without cable today. I turn on my TV and there's, what's today, Saturday, Sunday? Yesterday there were 32 football games. 32 football games, 10 stock car races. You name it. I didn't know which to watch first. So, and having grown up in an era when there was no TV, when things were, you were lucky to get a radio broadcast they didn't do away games, didn't do all the home games. The Eagles weren't very important back then. The Flyers had just started. The Phillies were the big thing in town. So I put in all this in my book. If anybody wants to buy one, the proceeds go directly to the Museum of Sports, which is something I'm trying to open in Philadelphia for the past several years. A sports museum for Philadelphia, huh? What an idea, huh? Do we have any fans in Philadelphia? Yeah. But I want to leave you with one.
Tell them the boxing story.
What?
Tell them about boxing.
About what?
Monday night boxing.
Boxing.
Monday night boxing.
What?
Joe Frazier.
Boxing?
Oh, Joe Frazier. Yeah.
Tell them
Tell
how you got Monday night boxing.
Ed Snyder was. Escort that man out, please. Bailiff. Ed Snyder was a very intense guy. He was brilliant, the most brilliant person I've ever met in my life. I learned so much from him. I never met a man smarter. He was liberal in terms of letting me do what I wanted. He was tight with other people in terms of keeping them on short leashes. But he had a sense of humor. A lot of people didn't realize he had a sense of humor. And I'll give you one example. After a hockey game several years ago, my wife Vicki, and I repaired to the director's lounge, Ed Snyder's private area where he entertains before and after games. And he had just installed these new high-def TVs with high-tech remotes. And the Flyers game was over, Sixers game was still on. They were in Detroit, and Comcast, the Spectre Car at that time, owned the 76ers. Ed says to the bartender, Clayton, can you change the channel and get the Sixers games on? He said, okay, sure. He starts fiddling around with it. He can't change the channel. Ed says, give me that. He's fiddling around. He can't change the channel. Just then, the president of Comcast Sportsnet walks in. And Ed says, here, you know all about cable. Can you change the channel? He can't change the channel. My wife leans over to me and she says, how many CEOs does it take to change a channel? Just then, Brian Roberts walks in with his wife, Aileen. He's the grand poobah of all Comcast cable and everything. Surely he could change the channel. Ed says, Brian, can you change the channel? He starts fiddling with it. My wife, Ed comes over to my wife and I, and he says, see, you call Comcast, they send somebody right over. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'll be happy to take any questions. And I'll be happy to sign any books over here afterwards. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the Franks